Hey, this is Black Think Tank. Did you know that when Malcolm X came to the UK, he stayed in the house of Michael X, a black power leader who was born in Trinidad but lived in Notting Hill? This is Michael X right here. Here's another picture of Michael X. This is him giving a speech at the Black Power Conference, which was held in London in the late 1960s. Here's a picture of him on the left with Muhammad Ali. When Muhammad Ali came to the UK, he hung out with Michael X, or Michael X hung out with him, depending on which side of the fence you're on. On the right, that's Stokely Carmichael in the sunglasses. Down in the bottom left-hand corner, that's Michael X. This was a high-profile figure. Michael X was the face of black power in the UK at the time. And Michael X crossed race boundaries. This is Michael X with Yoko and John Lennon. Michael X was rubbing shoulders with the ex-Beetle, John Lennon. Massive figure. Now, since black people had come to the UK in 1948, in the Windrush generation, they had been experiencing monumental racism. No blacks, no Irish, no dogs. And because of this racism they were experiencing, Michael X became a black power leader to fight this racism. The racism was so rife that when the Labour Party came into power and took over government, they passed this, the first ever Race Relations Act of 1965. So let's get this straight. The Race Relations Act of 1965 was passed by our friend, the Labour Party, to save black people from the rife racism. Now, the Race Relations Act 1965 was brought in by the Labour Party to save black people from racism. But guess who was the first ever person to be imprisoned under this Race Relations Act 2 years later? Go on, have a guess. You got it. A black person by the name of Michael X, the black power leader. Interesting. So let me get this straight. The law brought in to save black people from racism was used to imprison the black person who was fighting against racism. And this all happened under a Labour government, using a law brought in by the Labour Party. You couldn't make this up. So Michael X was found guilty of using inflammatory speech which incited racial hatred. That's what he got convicted of and was incarcerated. Now here's Enoch Powell. A year later, he gave his famous Rivers of Blood speech. The brown man will have the whip hand over the white man. You know this speech, right? Now, what is more racially inflammatory than Enoch Powell's speech? The law, the Race Relations Act, was brought in 65 to curtail stuff like what Enoch Powell had done. They used the law against Michael X for his speech. But here is possibly the most racist speech in English history, and the Labour government of that time did not use the law that they brought in to take Enoch Powell to task and charge him with racially inflammatory speech. What's going on? So it was the Labour Party that passed the law to make it possible for black people from Jamaica and the Caribbean to come to the UK on a ship to work. I'll say that again. Black people on a ship to come to a country to work. It was the Labour Party who passed the law to save the black people from racism. And it was the same Labour Party that then incarcerated the black man who was speaking out against the racism. But they didn't incarcerate the white power leader that was speaking up on behalf of racists. It's like the Labour Party's been conning black people since the Empire Windrush. And to be painfully honest, not much has changed since the 1940s up to the 1960s when we're dealing with the Labour Party. Because here was its most senior black shadow cabinet minister, Marsha Dicadova, who was the Minister for Equalities. She resigned this year, 2021, saying Labour has nothing to say on racial justice. You can see the article in The Voice online. Wow. This is the Black Think Tank. Tell us what you think.